The next is Nick Mole, who is policy, he says, I'd say policy director, why not, of the Pesticide Action Network, known as PAN, which is an excellent organisation celebrating its 30th year. And he's not specifically going to talk about this, but I'd like you to just briefly tell us what some of the successes you've had over the years, because this is a significant organisation.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, as I said, well, as Colin said, PAN, we've been working for 30 years and we work on every aspect of pesticides and the problems that they cause around the globe. And we've had some notable successes over the years. We've had some of the most unpleasant, hazardous, poisoning pesticides banned, most recently endosulfan, which is due for a global phase-out in the next year or so, which has poisoned countless people around the world. So we're very, very happy with that. And a number of other successes throughout the years globally that we work on: workers' rights, land rights, food sovereignty issues, direct poisonings, loss of biodiversity. Everything that pesticides do that is wrong, we try and counteract. And that's quite a big task because they do an awful lot of bad things. At the moment, we're very, very much focused on this whole issue with pesticides and bees and the effects that this particular class of pesticides called neonicotinoids are having on bees. And the complete lack of action from the British government in looking at how these pesticides are poisoning our bees, which provides so much to us, not just in terms of what they pollinate, but also in the joy of life. Bees, like elephants, are something that humans have got a very, very close linkage with. So we're working very hard to try and get these things banned as soon as we possibly can. Ready? Yeah. Right. And one of the big things that we are working on is trying to get all of London's public parks and green spaces, which are visited by about 32 million people every year, managed without pesticides. We've already convinced one London borough to go pesticide-free, and we're hoping the other 32 will follow suit in the very near future. So with your help, we might get there. But I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to talk specifically about what we've mentioned earlier, is the corporate takeover of the Olympics. And as this undermining what the Olympics is really stands for. And in particular, we're going to look at Dow, a pesticide company called Dow, and their sponsorship of the Olympics. I'm going to start with a quote. "Olympism is a philosophy of life, exalting and combining in a balanced whole the qualities of body, will and mind. Blending sport with culture and education, Olympism seeks to create a way of life based on the joy of effort, the educational value of good example, social responsibility, and respect for universal, fundamental ethical principles." Thus reads the very first paragraph of the fundamental principles of Olympism, as enshrined in the Charter of the International Olympic Committee. So how do the sponsors of the Olympics, and in particular Dow, fit into this ideal? And we're going to take you back. On the night of the 3rd of December 1984, at around midnight, the Union Carbide India Limited pesticide plant began leaking deadly gases onto the people of Bhopal in India. The immediate death toll is estimated at 3,000, and the total number of deaths attributed to the leak estimated to be 25,000, with as many as 125,000 people still suffering from the effects of being poisoned by this deadly gas. The site has never been properly cleaned up and continues to this day to poison the people of Bhopal. In 1999, local groundwater and well water testing near the site of the accident revealed mercury at levels between 20,000 and 6 million times those expected. Cancer, brain damage and birth defect causing chemicals were found in the water. Trichloroethene, a chemical that's been shown to impair fetal development, was found at levels 50 times higher than the US Environment Protection Agency safe limits. Dow acquired Union Carbide in 2001 after a civil settlement for the tragedy had been reached with the Indian government. And this paltry settlement, which was $470 million, was reached in 1989. And Dow continues to insist throughout the media that this is the end of the story. The International Olympic Committee and the London Organising Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, LOCOG, for their part, shamefully refused to countenance the fact that this may not actually be the whole story. So what are the facts? Well, to begin with, Union Carbide themselves elected the Indian courts as the correct forum to hear the Bhopal case. And in 1991, the courts decided that criminal charges must be reinstated against their ex-CEO, Warren Anderson, and the entire Union Carbide Corporation, which is now owned by Dow. These charges are hardly trifling, being of culpable homicide, not amounting to murder, and Dow was clearly aware of them at the point of takeover. Dow has total control of Union Carbide, but it has not produced Union Carbide in court, and this already seems astonishing enough to preclude Dow from any involvement with the Olympics. But worse still, Dow has actually used another wholly owned subsidiary, Dow Chemical India Private Limited, to obstruct a January 6, 2005 judicial summons addressed to its Michigan quarters, requesting Dow to explain its non-production in court of UCC, Union Carbide. So for over 10 years, Dow has been guilty of harbouring a fugitive from justice, or aiding and abetting an absconder that is charged with culpable homicide. So is that the end of the story? Is that all they're culpable of? Well, no. Dow has also been named as a respondent in a forthcoming curative petition in India's Supreme Court that aims to address inadequacies within the original civil settlement. Hearings on the petition were granted on February the 28th, 2011 by a 5-judge bench including India's Chief Justice. The Indian government is seeking an additional amount of up to $1.24 billion in compensation. Bhopal survivors, however, are quoting figures that the Indian government also put forward. Adequate compensation that reflects the tally of the dead and the severely ill and those who are still suffering from the poisoning would be closer to $8.1 billion. This is something that Dow continually refuses to address, and continually refuses to accept responsibility for. And there's more. Despite denying any liability for the abandoned Union Carbide factory that it now owns, it's been named in a public interest litigation in the Madhya Pradesh High Court, which seeks remediation of the site. And it's continuing to resist the Ministry's 2006 request for a £16 million deposit towards initial costs for the clear-up. And in another civil action, in the Southern District of New York, this action seeks relief and medical monitoring for the ongoing contamination in Bhopal caused by the indiscriminate dumping of toxic waste in and around the Union Carbide factory, for which Dow is currently responsible. The US courts have accepted that this is a distinct matter from the 1984 disaster, and one that therefore has not been part of any settlement to date. Union Carbide has argued in New York that only an Indian court can order a clean-up in Bhopal. However, both Union Carbide and Dow have pleaded that Indian courts have no jurisdiction over them. So it amounts to them saying that nowhere in the world can they be brought to trial for the nuisance they've respectively caused and inherited. The contaminated water in Bhopal continues to poison thousands of people to this day who have no other reliable source of drinking water. And this is Bhopal's second disaster. It's continuing, it's ongoing. Is that the end of it, Dow's problems? Not by a long shot. At the end of last year, the Pesticide Action Network presented a 274-page dossier of charges to a hearing of the Permanent People's Tribunal in Bangalore, India. The charges were aimed at the big 6 agrochemical companies, Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, DuPont, Monsanto, and Dow. The overall theme was to look at how these 6 companies, who between them control 74% of the global pesticide market and 49% of the global seed market, run roughshod over human rights across the globe. How they are responsible for deaths and poisonings, loss of livelihood, loss of land rights, loss of food sovereignty, and loss of biodiversity, all in the name of corporate profit. In the case of Dow, the evidence showed that it's positioned itself as one of 5 corporations dominating the genetically engineered seed market. Dow also exerts considerable political and social influence. Through the revolving door practice, several former US high-level government officials have become Dow's top executives and company leaders. Dow is responsible for hazardous chemicals, including the infamous Agent Orange and napalm, of which it was the sole producer, which were used during the Vietnam War. And the legacy in Vietnam still remains from the poisoning caused by the chemicals that they manufactured. What else have Dow done? Well, they produced DDT, which has contaminated the environment and people worldwide. They produce the insecticide chlorpyrifos that affects the nervous system and brain, particularly of young children. And some of the specific cases we brought against them at the Permanent People's Tribunal include pollution and endangerment of Arctic tribal nations and their environment as a result of the manufacture and use of the persistent organic pollutants such as DDT. Poisoning of Lake Apopka in Florida has been polluted and poisoned again by persistent organic pollutants such as DDT made by Dow. Production of organophosphates, particularly in India, with the sale, distribution and promotion of monocrotophos, which has led to many, many poisonings. Aerial spraying. They've developed pesticides that are specifically used for aerial spraying, which is one of the most hazardous ways of applying pesticides, and is particularly prevalent in the developing world. They've caused cancer in the Punjab by the use of the aforementioned pesticide, chlorpyrifos. Increased cancer rates have been noted and recorded, and this is all under the guise of the Indian Green Revolution. Use of those same pesticides has also contributed to contamination of food and water in the Punjab. They have suppressed, manipulated and distorted science by not allowing independent access to their own research on the safety of the chemicals they manufacture, and by harassing those that question the safety of the products they sell. They've been monitoring our communications in terms of what they do in the Olympics and the Permanent People's Tribunal. So they actively look at what we do, which I quite like. I think it means they might be a little bit scared or nervous about us. And they've also been accused of and been found to be complicit in bribing officials in India. So after all that, do we think they fit with the Olympic ideal? Well, I, the Pesticide Action Network, I think it's very clear that they don't fit in. And in fact, having them associated with the Olympics brings the Olympics into disrepute. However, to the shame of the British government and Sebastian Coe's Olympic organising committee, they can see nothing wrong with getting into bed with Dow. And it's just another example of corporate power and influence trumping morals and principles. The Bhopal Medical Appeal, who have been working very, very hard on trying to get Dow dropped as a sponsor, have issued a challenge to Sebastian Coe. Go to Bhopal, meet the victims and survivors, drink the water in Bhopal. And if you're not prepared to do that, drop Dow as a sponsor. So far, Mr. Coe hasn't responded. And again, evidence of the shamefaced kowtowing to corporations and industry that this government and the London organisers of the Olympics are guilty of. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask you if you've tried any other politicians, or for example the Mayor of London, about that?
Yeah, the Mayor is part of the Conservative Party, and absolutely the Conservative Party, beholden to industry as they are quite prepared to take Dow's word that they're not responsible for it, it's been dealt with, it's a non-issue. And that's maybe a bit unfair on the Conservatives, because it's not just the Conservatives, it's the Labour Party as well, are equally as close and cosy with the pesticide industry as the current government. They wield an awful lot of power, an awful lot of influence. It's a multi-billion-pound a year industry, and they listen to them, they have the ear of government. Not all politicians, there have been some that have been very vocal about it and are very upset that Dow are involved in this. And they should be supported. Barry Gardner in particular has been very keen that they should be dropped. But in general terms, no.
And Coe himself has kept silent.
He's not kept silent. He said, I can see no problem with it. He's perfectly happy with Dow's explanation. He's perfectly convinced that what they say is true and there's no need to drop them. But then there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
You know, they're paying for this sponsorship. But they are putting the financial, their financial requirements to fund this Olympics over and above the moral obligation that they have to, I think, the people of Bhopal.
And what's in it for Dow directly? Because they're not related.
What they're sponsoring is the big wrap around the main stadium, and the opportunity to have their name associated with the Olympics, the greenest Olympics ever, I think I've heard.
Wouldn't be surprised.
So it's, for Dow, it's a very expensive greenwash. Well, they get to look good, like a lot of the other dubious Olympic sponsors, of which there are many.
And one last thing before I throw it open. Dow must have realised when they took on Union Carbide, must have realised that it was a poisoned chalice, and yet they took it. I don't understand why they took it on.
Well, they took it on because there were a lot of benefits to it. They took on a couple of companies that manufacture a lot of pesticides in India. So they took on the good stuff and thought they could just ignore the bad stuff. But the trouble is, when you take over a company, you should take on not just its assets, but also its liabilities. And in this case, its liability is to clear up the mess that they made in Bhopal and to ensure that the people that are suffering are compensated and looked after.
That's clearly the moral point. Is there a clear legal position on this? Because apparently there isn't.
Well, there are a number of ongoing cases at the moment, ongoing court cases, civil litigation, which are still to be resolved. And we'll have to wait and see the outcome. But from what I've read, what I can see, and what I understand, there is a legal obligation for them.
There is?
I believe that is the case. They take up the liabilities of the company they bought.
Right, thank you. Anybody?
Yeah, you suggested that Lord Sebastian Kurt's got to go all the way to Bhopal to drink some water and see what's going on. I was wondering if it was possible to, because we've got a spare sculpture stand over there, whether we can get a glass of water, somebody could pop in here and...
That is a wonderful idea, and as soon as I get back to the office tomorrow, I will try and get us sent a bottle of Bhopal water.
I'm afraid there's another exhibit now. We've been at 61 sculptures.
Brilliant, let's do it. We are part, and I have to say I'm very excited to be part of a piece of art. So let's do that. I will get on the case tomorrow.
2 glasses. We could perhaps Boris, his name, could have one too.
Yeah, well, 2 glasses and a bottle of water from Bhopal. I will see what we can do, because I think that would be fantastic. And he wouldn't have to go so far.
Exactly, yeah, so there.
Yeah.
The journalists would like it.
Exactly.
It's a very good book.
Can I ask, I don't know whether you know or whether anyone else might know, how much all this is worth to the Olympics? And also, basically the details of the sponsorship. Like, is it the London Organising Committee who negotiates all the sponsorship, or the International Committee? How much is it worth in total? How much is Dow paying? And I'm also a bit intrigued whether Dow has an official title. Like, there's the official bank of the Olympics and the official...
They will have something. Well, I guess it'll be just official Olympic sponsor. I have got to figure something. It's something like they've got a 10-year sponsorship deal. So I imagine it's with both the IOC and the London Organising Committee.
Okay.
And it's worth something. I think just for the wrap they paid £7 million, I believe, which is a lot of money in anyone.
As far as I know, for a second-tier sponsor, you pay 20 to 40 million.
It might, yeah.
The first tier is 50 million up. But even so, it's nothing in terms of the money that they
In terms of the actual, also the actual cost. I was wondering how much sponsorship they raise in the context of what's about.
It's a lot. I could.
The taxpayers basically pay the 9 billion. As far as I understand it, these 40 million, 20 million pounds from the sponsors are actually to enable so-called people in the developing world to participate. It's nothing actually to do with the running of the Olympics, which would be born for. So, and anyway, what is 40 million compared with 9 billion?
9,000 billion. 9,000 million, isn't it? 9 billion.
Yeah. Yes.
Compare with 40.
I mean, yeah.
We don't need them.
It certainly wouldn't stop the Olympics running if they dropped Dow and gave them their money back.
Isn't there, there's a sort of irony where Dow is paying for Indian athletes potentially to I wonder if there's a...
Well, interestingly, the Indian athletes are threatening a boycott. They're really, really upset about it. For not just this, but the Paralympics as well. And they are threatening a boycott, which I think would send a very... it would be a huge shame if they weren't there, but it would send a very powerful message. So again, we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. But it's for a decorative wrap around the main stadium. It's not an intrinsic part of the fabric of the Olympics.
Oh, well, I'm sure. Well, yeah, no, that's their privilege.
Yeah, that's what they get out of it,
Yeah.
basically. But I don't. It's not an amount that would. Somebody else would step in. You know. So yeah, they get to say Olympic sponsors, how wonderful we are, and it's corporate greenwash.
And Cameron is backing the moral issue by saying it's
Nothing to do with me.
It's all to do with the
It's all to do with low cog and them. That's their decision. I can't make. He's the best.
What's
But
strange to me is just the amount of money. Like, so the UK government pays 9 billion, whatever it is, to put on these games, which are becoming something of almost a corporate showcase. It's almost like an opportunity to showcase these corporates, and their own contribution is minimal, possibly laughable in comparison. Even though it's large sums, it's actually it's nothing compared to the cost of running it, and yet the focus in running it is very much to sort of give all the opportunities of showcase these corporate entities which aren't even properly contributing.
No, you're right. And for David, yeah, we've paid for this. Yeah, we have. You, me, all of us. We've paid for this. And they're not. They won't. You know, there's a massive petition at the moment to try and get Dow dropped. Nobody's listening. And you're right. David Cameron has ducked the issue as a spineless politician that he is. No, he's the Prime Minister. Stand up, drop them. It's not difficult. But then that brings you back to the impotence of John Major and the impotence of politicians in the face of corporate power. And that really is what it all boils down to. This Olympics has got nothing to do with the principles enshrined in the Olympic ideal. This has all got to do with corporate showcasing, power and business and wealth overtaking that moral imperative. And I don't think, whatever happens, it is possible to leave a lasting positive legacy from these Olympics when they are being poisoned by association with Dow and the other questionable sponsors that they've got on board.
How many people know about this?
Not enough.
They will do.
But they will do.
It's on YouTube.
But we're trying, and we work with the Bhopal Medical Appeal as well, who are doing great things. There's a lot. I think there's about 26,000 people have signed the petition. So I would encourage you all to go and sign the petition, which you can find the details on the Bhopal Medical Appeal's website.
One trouble is, of course, that it isn't just the idea that the government is cowardly in the face of corporate power. The economy is based on the idea that you boost corporate wealth and then you call it economic growth, and that is considered to be your mark of success. Exactly.
It's all round the wrong way.
Exactly.
Much as farming systems are all around the wrong way.
Precisely so.
It's all about the agrochemical companies making money for themselves rather than the farmers feeding the people in the best way possible and the least harmful. It's all about profits and what you can take out of it.
Trickle-down effect, that's the reason.
Which patently doesn't work.
That's going to get us out of poverty.
We do have to dig very deep, don't we?
Yes, especially as a farmer.
And Nick, you describe this cloth that chemicals are put in.
Sorry?
What did you describe it as? Decorative?
It's like a decorative wrap that they're putting around the main stadium. And it'll have their logo on it. There's a very, very nicely subverted picture of it that the Bhopal Medical, an artist has done for the Bhopal Medical Appeal. So coming back to the power of art, it's wonderful. It's a big picture of Dow and a skull and crossbones wrapped around the Olympic Stadium. But that's what they're paying for. They're paying for advertising.
What are they covering up?
The actual stadium, the main stadium.
Isn't that symbolic of something?
It probably is, but I'll leave it to the artists to work out what that symbolism is.
The chemicals are doing the cloth, not the artists.
Yeah. No, I mean you to describe it, to work out what the symbolism of Dow covering the Olympic Stadium is. Yeah, which is what they do.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.